Hey, welcome back. We have with us Professor Rob Crossler, who has been formerly the chair of Management Information Systems.
Management, information systems,
Okay.
and entrepreneurship. So,
Oh. But now, he's the Senior Associate Dean for Academic Affairs. He's also the George and Carolyn Huffman Distinguished Professor. And I don't know if you know what that means, but a lot of times people will donate some money and then you get to use it for your research and advance your program. And I think that's probably what it was. And you don't just get these. I think you're one of these people as well, aren't you? Yeah. Okay. And so people that get these distinguished kind of acknowledgements are very well poised to do a lot of good things and very well respected in their field. In 2019, he was named a distinguished member of the cum laude by the Association for Information Systems. He served as president of the AIS Special Interest Group on Information Security and Privacy from 2019 to 2020. He's got award-winning research centers on the factors that affect security and privacy decisions of individuals. And I love the way he teaches. He's presented different times and he's always very interactive. And I learned a lot from him. Being a chemical engineer, I'm a little bit outside of the field, but when he talks, it's like, oh, I get it. So we're going to enjoy what you have for us.
Great. Thank you, Bernie. So I've been working in the world of behavioral security for 20 years now. I started my doctoral program in 2005 at Virginia Tech, and all the way through that program, and basically every paper I've ever written has had some aspect of information security, information privacy, almost always centering around human behavior. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'll start with the phrase that I think still rings true today, and that is the human is the weakest link in anything around security. So we can have the most secure system in the world, and if there's a way that it can be hosed up, it's because a human just decided to do something wrong. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. I'm going to be very transparent here and say I completely swapped the order of what I was going to talk about today because I learned when I showed up that you guys spent a lot of time talking about the Canvas incident from a couple of weeks ago yesterday. We're going to visit that in a little bit, but I'm not going to make that the primary focus of what I'm going to talk about. I think we can learn some things from that. I want to start with talking about deepfakes. So what is a deepfake? Yeah, back here. I saw the first hand up. Brave soul.
Like generative AI, like synthetic audio, image, and video.
Okay. It's a good technical definition. Who can give me a simple definition that your mom might understand? Yeah. You need to have the box to talk. Is that a rule around here?
Like a speaking stick.
Well, I think it's so the people online can hear what you have to say.
It's just using like a bunch of training data to essentially write someone else's face onto your own face.
Okay, so it could be face, and exactly the same way with voice. So one of the things I got to experience last fall in the security class I taught, I worked with a company that had an app that would use AI from a training set of data to ask follow-up questions and to give oral exams. And to make it very real, they deep-faked me, so it was like I was asking students questions for an exam, and we had a back and forth, and it took about 30 seconds of me talking for them to make a very, very accurate fake of my voice, asking all sorts of questions that I never talked about. Very, very easy to do. So it does not take much to fake someone's voice. So how many of you post videos online? How many of you have podcasts? Oh, I do. If you're interested, aigoes-to-college.com. We just dropped episode 35 talking about how AI affects all things higher education. But yes, voices are out there. How many executives do you think post their voices out there online? A lot. Are they required to? In some ways, I think they are, right? If you are the CEO and there's an earnings call or there's some sort of an announcement, you go online and you have these conversations. Or you're asked to be interviewed on CNN or Fox News to talk about, the next great thing that's out there. So their voices are all out there. And so if your voice is out in the public space, how hard is it then for someone to make a deep fake of your voice? Super easy. All right, I'm going to share an example of something that I read about in the Lewiston Tribune last week, and this freaked me out. It was a scary story. How many of you saw a deepfake story show up and be talked about in the Lewiston Tribune this week? This amazed me that it happened here. So someone who had been a police officer, retired police officer, received a phone call. And the police officer's daughter lived in Spokane, had gone to Seattle for a concert, and gets a phone call from the daughter saying that she was in an accident and had broken up a drug deal. And ultimately, other voices came on, and was the drug dealers who said that they had kidnapped her and were holding her ransom and needed the dad to pay them all this money to make up for the loss of drugs that were stolen, to make up for, the time and the damage and all these sorts of things. And so this dad, after hearing his daughter's voice on the phone, freaks out and actually goes to bank after bank after bank as far away as Boise, Idaho, and sends through Bitcoin, because obviously we're going to send through Bitcoins to drug dealers, right? Not traceable, $13,000, until they end up in a bank in Pullman, Washington, and through a note that they were able to get to the teller and acting all serious, like they weren't trying to, the bad guys could be listening sort of thing. The bank teller was able to learn that there was something funny going on, called the Pullman Police Department discreetly from the back after having to go and try to find $5,000 of cash that the bank had sitting around. And they ultimately were able to get a hold of the daughter through a different channel, through the police officers. And the man broke down in tears, right? Because his daughter was fine, thought something terrible had happened to his daughter. All through a deep fake that they had of the daughter, that they were able to manipulate him into sending $13,000. So this isn't an organizational security issue. This is an example of something that happened in everyday life. But I think when I see these articles, I also like to put my hat on that says, what can we learn in the business world about how these things can manifest themselves as well? So the first thing I want to share with you is what I've done with my family to make sure this can't happen to us. And we'll talk about organizations, so forth, is our family has a code phrase, right? If I get a call from my kid and I don't know if it's my kid or not, we have a question and an agreed upon answer of what that is, that if you do not know our family, you will never know what this is. So that way we can authenticate each other, because I've seen 2 or 3 or 4 of these stories over the last year. So number one takeaway right now that has maybe nothing to do with exactly the agenda I have today is make sure you and your family have code words, because you never know when something really weird is going to happen. And in this world of deepfakes, it could happen. All right. What about at WSU? How many of you ever call the Crimson Desk and want to deal with things? Reset passwords, any of those sorts of things? What does Crimson Desk make you do now when you call to deal with password resets and that sort of stuff? Yeah.
They make you get
Use the box.
They make you get on a Zoom call and you have to hold like your Cougar ID up to the camera.
Mm-hmm. Right? So they have you verify that you are who you are, and they have you go through a process of verification. I've been talking with some people who says that deep fakes and people trying to fake being students is happening more and more often at the Crimson Help Desk, right? So what do you do if you are on the other side on the help desk to try to verify that I don't have somebody trying to talk me out of giving away access to someone's account? What might you do? How might we, you've got a password reset. How do I make sure I'm really talking to who I think I'm talking to? Yeah. Yeah.
Something I saw was hold your hand in front of the camera to try and like break up any like face deep fake that there would be.
Mm-hmm. Right. So holding up that ID and doing some actions in that video is a way to hopefully get them doing something that would break what that deep fake technology might do to give away those clues of what's going on. Right. So through a prolonged conversation, we can hopefully begin to see what's going on, maybe even asking some pertinent questions that the student would know themselves. All right, so then let's go from Crimson Help Desk to you are working for an organization. You get a call from your boss who wants you to share with them some information about a report that's maybe sensitive. Sounds just like your boss. There's a question your boss might ask. Are you going to share with them? No, I'm going to deny my boss. I'm going to say no to my boss when he calls me on the phone. How many of you would, I mean, it's okay to be honest. We're talking about deepfakes right now, and obviously I'm setting something up. But how many of you, if your boss called you on the phone, or your dad called you on the phone, or someone you know, would you have a conversation with them and reveal information? I think most of us probably would, right? It used to be we'd get a text message that says, hey, I'm busy in a meeting. Can you do this thing for me? Now it's that voice call. So why? Why is it that we would be willing to share that with our boss? Yeah. Oh, I want good performance reviews at the end of the day, that I want my boss to like me and to feel like I'm willing to do my job, right? So I might have some motivations to be a good employee, and a good employee would obviously do what the boss asks. Why else? What are some traits about people that would work in this place as well? Trust, right? We're all trusting people, right? And one of the things that as we look at technologies and how technologies are used is hackers, bad guys, I like to call them, are trying to violate or take advantage of our trust. They're trying to say, you're trusting, I'm going to use that as a source of weakness. How many of you want to live in a world where you can't trust people? That would be a pretty boring place to live, right? I would probably get depressed if I felt like I could trust no one around me. And so because of that personality trait, because most humans are wired that way, attackers will try to take advantage of that. So let's go back to that boss giving you a call. If you get this call, maybe it's a video call, maybe it's a phone call from your senior leadership, from that boss, asking for urgent access to something or sensitive information, what sorts of things could you do? What process could you go through to try to override that human desire to trust people? Yeah. Right. Maybe you have a keyword in your organization. Yeah.
So like your regular day-to-day employee doesn't have access to like sensitive systems.
Oh, so we might put some limited controls into place to say that we're going to limit who can do some things. So we might actually have some organizational rules and policies that would prevent you from being able to answer your boss's request. So that might be a good thing. What else could we do? So basically what you're saying is maybe a zero trust approach even to our employees, that we're not even going to trust people, which is an approach people take, right? Minimum access to things for that very reason. How many of you, oh yeah, you're on the other side of the room. Do we need to toss the box? Let's toss the box. This is fun. Didn't break anything. We're good.
Wouldn't it be a different phone number than the actual person?
It might.
Or
I like where you're going.
if my dad calls me, like his contact will pop up. But if a guy pretending to be my dad calls me, it'll just be a random number, right?
Right. Perhaps it might be. Well, that's one thing we could look at, right? Are there little clues in there that raise the bat signal that says I should maybe not trust this person? But with technology, is it possible for me to spoof your dad's phone number?
Probably.
Right? And in a world of AI and I could probably ask Claude Code how to spoof a phone number and could learn in 30 seconds how to do this thing. So you're right. It could be his phone number. Yeah. Or hold on. She needs the box. Let's see if you can toss it across the room.
Boom, right?
Oh, here goes. Oh, the basketball pass. Oh, someone else gets to talk now. No?
Having like dual authentication systems set up, like Duo.
Okay.
I mean,
so,
that's the only one that I'm familiar with, but having one of those in place.
so how would that work when the boss calls me? Do I have to make him send me a 6-digit code or something?
Yeah, like sure, like that would work. Or like they like get a notification on their device or like whatever device they have registered with the system that they have to like push and like say like, okay, yes, this is my device. Like this is who's trying to log in at this time.
Okay. What about banks? Do you guys ever get calls from your bank that ask you for your credit card number and all that good stuff? Ask you for your social security number when they call on the phone? Most of the time, no. What does the bank want you to do if you want to talk to them in their fraud department? Either go to the bank or call the number that's on the back of your credit card, right? So you are initiating that call with a known number. So going back to if it was your dad, what could you do? You could say, this seems funny. Let me call you right back, right? And then if you call your dad and he answers on his number and you'd be like, hey, Dad, did you just call me with this weird thing? And he'd probably be all like, yeah, no, that's really weird. And so we can try to find, and I think this is what you were getting at, different ways of confirming through alternative channels, am I really talking to that person that I wanted to be talking to? And so I think looking for creative ways to put those things in place. And I'm seeing more and more that organizations are actually encouraging their employees to do this because they know that deep fakes are becoming a thing. So with the help of AI, I put together some different ways of doing things. So these advanced threats, these things that can come in, AI cloned voices, right? We talked about how easy it is to make that happen. These live videos that can bypass visual checks, at least at first glance. Help desks being manipulated. Finance teams being pressured by fake authorities where they're called to actually do things. And so what can we do? Multiple channels. Talked about that, having different ways. That code word or challenge system, does our organization have one? The problem with an organization having one is if 1,000 people know it, what are the odds that the wrong person knows it? So have you guys talked about the shared key problems and some of that stuff in the security space? That we have synchronous encryption and asynchronous encryption. So synchronous is when we use the same key to encrypt something and to decrypt it. It's kind of like the key to my house. Everybody has to have that key in order to get in my house. It's a shared key. Well, that doesn't work real well when a lot of people need to be able to share secured information because then it's really not secured. We've got to get that shared key out there. We never know who has it. With asynchronous encryption, which PKI is one example of that, I have a key that's my private key that I can use that only I know, and you can encrypt something with my public key, and then I can decrypt it and know exactly that it was meant for me. And it's done with different keys. The same problem if we have that code word or challenge system. We would have to have it set up in such a way, kind of like a dual factor authentication system where there's a randomly generated something that only they would know that could validate things. We may also have policies that override that trust. And I think that would become part of that training and that deepfake training is, what if our organization policy was do not reveal any information over the phone to anyone ever? And some of you laugh a little bit, but this is not much different than my brother who works for Boeing, and he can do no work for Boeing unless he is on a VPN or inside of Boeing's actual building And he also has a little card that has to be plugged into the side of his computer that proves it's actually him logging in to do those things, right? They have these extra security steps in place to ensure that none of that protected information that Boeing cares about would get out to other people. And so if we take that sort of paranoia, if you will, that we can't trust networks that we're on, we can't trust that it really is that person in front of their computer, that they didn't leave it logged on their, home table, and their kid comes up and decides to do something. That would never happen. What are some controls we can put in place technologically? Well, those are really policies, and putting those policies in place that say, here's what we're going to do to make sure that nobody can get away with beating us through deepfakes. I think this is a space that is going to change a lot in the next year or two. How many of you remember what AI tools were like a year ago? Have you seen the video? I think it's of Will Smith eating spaghetti. Everyone familiar with that video? And how starting in 2023, 2024, 2025, it's gone from, oh my goodness, that was terrible, to holy cow, that actually really looks like Will Smith sitting at a table shoving spaghetti in his face. And that's happened in a very, very short amount of time. And so as these sorts of advances are made so quickly, it becomes very hard to stay in front of it from a how do we secure the enterprise perspective. So I think this is a space you guys are all going to be entering and figuring out how do we keep what should be secured in a space where technological solutions are being made readily available very, very quickly. Yeah. Oh, you need a box. Box.
Do you think like the security questions of like what's your mother's maiden name are still a viable way of authentication?
No. I mean, if you think about it, those have been terrible ever since we had things like, at least related to family names and so forth, Ancestry.com type stuff where you can, if I knew your name, I could probably find you in a family tree somewhere that's on the internet, all for $19.99 a month or something. A lot of that information is just very, very out there. I have a friend, this is kind of a tangent. We brought him in September and gave a talk where he's doing some technology where it'll ask for your address, and to validate you, well, it doesn't ask your address. It finds out who you are. It knows where you live based on that, and it will ask you questions like, if you were driving to your house, which of these 4 streets are you most likely to have driven on? And does some things in real time with a very short amount of time for you to be able to answer these questions. So for me, it might say, Davis Way, and then a whole bunch of other streets that aren't anywhere near my house. I would pick Davis Way and asking other questions related to who you are. They did some things with mouse tracking and how they used the mouse in answering questions to detect people who were committing financial fraud, and ultimately sold their company to Experian for 7 digits, and changed their life with this invention of using technology to get away from some of these standard ways that we have been doing things. So that was a really interesting talk. NeuroID is the name of the company that got sold, if you're interested in seeing what they're all about. But you might actually know him, Joe Valasich. Did you ever know Joe when he was at WSU? Joe Valasich. Interestingly, he was the first person to have the Hubman chair that I now have, and was here back in 2011, I think is when he left WSU, but started the doctoral program at MIS. So anyways, did some really cool things after he left and went to the University of Arizona, using neuropsychology and different things to try to get around what has become very easy ways to trick and fool systems. Other questions before I pivot a little bit? Yeah.
Did you sell something like before the whole AI?
Yeah, he sold it about, I want to say 2 years ago. So it's been fairly recent. It was before AI really blew up. But yeah. Yeah.
Do you think we could like cause AI to hallucinate on itself? Like right now it knows how to make good deepfakes because we've taught it how, but do you think we could like accidentally on purpose do the opposite?
I think that sounds like a great capstone project for a CySER student. No, yeah, the answer is probably. Yeah.
What's your opinion on like policy reform regarding AI and like deepfakes?
Yeah, so my policy, my opinion is we need more of it. And I think we need more smart people looking at these very, very problems. Yeah, there's all sorts of issues we could take up about what should policy look like. And in many ways, if we rely on true capitalism to figure out what we do with AI, we are going to probably end up in a place that we don't love. Most all technologies need some level of legislative control around them. But as a country, I would say the United States is usually fairly slow to act. I would look to Europe and see what GDPR pushed some privacy rules that actually had teeth in them before the US got on board with some of that way of thinking. But the other thing that I think is really interesting, and definitely an AI tangent, but it really gets to the influence and the power of people. And if you saw this during graduation ceremonies, most speakers at graduation ceremonies who touted the new world that is coming because of AI were being booed. That people are feeling threatened and aren't loving, whether it's the impact it's having with data centers going into all sorts of communities or the impact on jobs or all these different things. And I think when people get motivated, one of the ways they respond is through influencing legislation and how do we try to put boundary conditions on what can be done. And I don't think it's squashing and saying no to technologies, but how do we do it with wisdom and value of human oversight and some of those sorts of things. But anyways, Rob the politician now. Not quite what my intent of this conversation was, but I think it's worth talking about, and we need to have more of these conversations. Yeah.
A lot of mouse tracking.
Yeah.
People can pay for data like that.
Yep. So I'm going to repeat your question. How do I think security will be affected by the ability to do mouse tracking and other sorts of things? And that same person who shared with us the talk, one of the things that he looks at in fraud is how many people are copy and pasting data into fields. Because let's say you go to a website and you're going to log on, there's certain behaviors that will happen with your mouse, with your keyboard, even if you're using some sort of a password management software, there is certain behavior that will not be seen to the naked eye, but can be detected by the technologies for how that's put in there, that can tell the machine on the other side if it's legitimate or not. And so I think we're going to start seeing that is paying attention technologically to whether we think it really is a human or not. And you guys are probably seeing that. Where do you see that with Google?
Sometimes I've noticed when I'm searching on Google, it'll like do a verification before it shows search result.
Right, so it'll say, are you human? Right, and depending on the technology that's being used, sometimes it's just a checkbox, but I'm pretty sure Google is doing some things to see how did your mouse move to go to that checkbox, and did you get there in such a way to where it looked like a human? And so it's looking for those, I like to call them those ones and zero signals that are being communicated behind the scenes that verify whether you're a human. I've seen others that make you actually hold down on a button or whatever for 5 seconds to verify that you're a human. There's lots of different ways we do this, all because in a world where we've empowered technology to do so much, it's still important that we know there's a human involved. And so how does that look? How are we going to have to change how we do that in a world where, if I put OpenClaw on my machine, I can, I guess, have my computer 24/7 making me millions of dollars doing automated things, and I don't ever have to work again as long as I live. I haven't seen that play out well for a lot of people so far, but as part of the hype anyways, right? Part of what the promise of what they're trying to deliver. All right, let's pivot just a minute. I know you guys talked about Canvas, and so I think we've got some good takeaways that I want to make sure we get to from a human perspective related to Canvas. So without spending as much time here as I wanted to, let's make sure we all agree on some of the very basics. What happened 2 weeks ago when you guys were probably done with your finals already?
Well, I was set to take a final, and then that canvas was down from the Shining Hunters, and I had to postpone the final for Friday.
All right, so we're going to attribute to Shiny Hunters. The system hackers took down Canvas just for WSU? No, for everybody who uses Canvas. I heard it was upwards of about 8,800 schools. I happened to be at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville at the time, and they were smack dead in the middle of finals and canceled their Friday final because on Thursday night they didn't know A, if it was going to be available, and B, if students needed access to Canvas to study for their finals, it wasn't available. And so that messed things up. How? How did Shiny Hunters do what Shiny Hunters did? You guys talk about this yesterday? No?
Yeah.
So let's grab the box real quick and make sure. My friend Long is online. We want to make sure he can hear your answer.
I guess they exploited some like free for teachers
Mhm.
functionality and I guess that's how they got in.
Okay, so on Canvas, there's a way they made free for teachers available, and that's how they got in. But what was the problem? What was the mistake that allowed that to work? They put that instance of Canvas in the exact same server space as the server space of all of these people who were paying for Canvas access. So the 8,800 schools who all wrote, probably 6-digit checks to be able to have access to Canvas for all of their students, all of those Canvas spaces were in the same space as these free ones were. So somebody made a decision who said, that is a good idea, maybe not a good idea, but that was their idea and they went with it. Maybe with good intentions. Maybe because it was free, they didn't want to put a whole lot of infrastructure behind it. I don't know the why, but from what I'm hearing, this is how someone was able to create a vector to get in to be able to mess up 8,800 people's lives. And then ultimately, Canvas paid all sorts of people, or Shiny Hunters, all sorts of money. And there's some people who are upset about state tax dollars that paid for Canvas that then got paid to hackers and all sorts of things. We could go in there, but we'll set that aside. So there's human mistake number one, right? A programmer, a developer, an engineer, somewhere, somehow decided to stand that free service up in a certain space. What data did they steal? You guys? Yeah. Oh, he needs the box. There we go.
If I remember correctly, it was mostly account information like emails, passwords, and student emails and passwords.
I don't think passwords were taken from what I've heard. It was emails, names, maybe student ID numbers, some level of personally identifiable information, but not secure information. Which, yay, my password didn't get compromised, right? I guess I'm not getting another year free of identity theft monitoring software because they didn't get that password. Who knows? Who knows what the settlements are going to look like? Who knows what all that looks like? But is it a problem that Shiny Hunters got that data? What I'm hearing is they deleted it and they proved that it was deleted and they didn't keep it. So is it a problem?
Did they actually do it, or did they claim they did it?
Well, and that is a great question, right? So how do you know if somebody actually deleted it and didn't make a copy on a thumb drive somewhere? Is it possible to truly know that? No, in theory, the owner of Canvas, I sent your the instructor, thank you, watched them delete it. So the phrase I've heard is honor among thieves. So what does that mean when someone says that phrase? Honor among thieves.
They have a code of ethics. Don't do this level of theft or this level of crime or else.
Right, so shiny hunters want people to trust them. Because if we trust, going back to the whole trust concept, shiny hunters, when they go and do this to somebody else and promise that they truly deleted the data, they never did anything with it, if it turns out they lied to Canvas, then nobody else will ever write them another paycheck again. And their career as criminals is over because they were not honorable with that thing in which they were trusted. Which seems somewhat paradoxical when you start thinking about it that way. But that's what we're supposed to believe. Okay, yeah. Oh, he needs a box. Yeah, throw that over there.
Yep.
I just wanted to say, I mean, depending on how much like they made them pay, like it's almost like hiring a pen tester, right?
Oh yeah, they got. I'm pretty sure they got billions of dollars.
Oh.
I haven't heard the exact number, but they there was a significant paycheck written to the hackers.
Huh.
So it is kind of like pen testers, but they're not pen testers that I hired myself in a good company, or I'm sure Canvas did this actually. I'm sure they had their own penetration testers and doing various different things and looking at this. The problem is it's not always good, right? If you're hacking an organization, you need to find one pathway in. If you're protecting an organization, you have to protect every pathway in. So it's pretty hard to ensure that you've got 100% protection. We can go into conversations about defense in depth and having multi-layers of protection to make sure we're overlapping where we might have a weakness. But let's assume now, I know that 8,800 schools, all college students, have just had their name and their email address, just those two things compromised. If I'm even another hacker out there, how many of you have that information probably somewhere out there on the dark web somewhere? You've been notified of another breach that your email address and your name is out there. My stuff's out there. It's been hacked multiple times. Okay. What if I get an email that says something that looks really official to me from about my Canvas page? And it's related to maybe even this hack that I could click here to secure this thing. And let's say I sent that to 20,000 WSU students. How many WSU students do you think are going to click on that link when they say, here's how you make sure that your campus is fine? 75%? Well, probably not that high, but I bet you it's greater than one student will do it. And how expensive is it to send 20,000? So now that this information is out there, there's another vector that whether it's the people who did this incident or other people who are taking advantage of it are now going to try to get in and to circumvent and to get this information. So abuse at wsu.edu, are you all familiar with that? Should you ever get an email that you aren't sure about, forward the email to abuse@wsu.edu. They'll do a couple of things. One, they might actually be able to shut down the place where those emails are coming from because there's information in those emails. They can do some stuff about it. If a person's username and password has been compromised, they will reset those and do some things in place so the process can't move forward. But that requires people to recognize that and to send that to abuse. And I can tell you that WSU students click on those links quite regularly because I regularly get emails that tell me about new job opportunities or something to make, $21 an hour or something. And yes, every semester they're showing up. Interestingly, today I got one that was trying to, looks like it's from Microsoft, setting up a new Microsoft account with my WSU email address. It was wrong. I mean, it was very obvious to me, but I've been getting a few more of those social things now that was amplified. And what I see and suspect happening is that these are the result of fresh information being out for a while, trying to get people to pay in. So social engineering, right? So we're trying to trick people. One of the hypotheses I read about somebody like generally trust, and I haven't seen it confirmed. Again, we aren't even actually able to confirm terribly well the information that we talked about with that attack vector. I have some great news on that. But another way is through a phishing attack as one possible way this happens. What is phishing? Have you guys heard that? Voice phishing. That would come up with really weird terms in security space, right? Phishing, that someone would actually use their voice to call up and trick somebody at the parent company to do something. It goes back to that idea of deepfakes. Doing phishing attacks, where I can do a voice phishing attack, is becoming much easier. Let's go to this slide, talk about these things for a minute. So as we think about these different ways of doing things and thinking about the learning management platform, why did attackers decide to go after a company like Canvas? In the box.
Probably because there's a ton of information on like most American schools use Canvas, and it's children, so that could have more of an emotional attachment. And I guess Shiny Hunters did it as like a show of force, because that they could do that, and it could be done to probably other systems like that.
Okay. How many of you ever remember hearing that if you have a Mac, you can't get a virus? Get a Mac because they're way more secure than a PC. At one point in time, Macs had about 5% of market share. Almost everybody had a Windows PC. And so although a Mac has been demonstrated to be hackable, it can be done. People didn't target Macs because almost everybody had a Windows PC. And so you were setting yourself apart a little bit by being different. People would go after a Microsoft Windows PC because there were so many out there. And that's the same story. And it's kind of what you're getting to a little bit with, I can get to so much information, is if you attack the one company that is providing a service to 8,800 schools, you get into one single point and you get access to so much more than if you just found a way to get into, say, WSU. You get into WSU, you have, some ransom you can do towards those 20,000 students or whatever those numbers are. Whereas with 8,800 schools, and I'm guessing probably millions of student records at that point, that one place gives you a much bigger pool to get that money from. So oftentimes those single points are targeted. How many of you remember last fall, and we had one glorious week where there were 2 cloud companies that went down? You guys remember that? Well, who was it?
Was it
AWS.
CrowdStrike.
Okay, it was because of CrowdStrike, but AWS went down and Azure went down. And between Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, they have about 2/3 of all cloud traffic. And just taking down one of those companies for a day took down a whole bunch of people, including Canvas. It got hit last fall. But those single points of failure make for very interesting targets, because in taking down a whole bunch of people, you have a lot more power in whatever it is you're doing to try to get money. We talked about partial data exposure, creating the downstream risk. The idea that if I get your information, we're able to maybe get you to click on other links to be susceptible to more of those phishing attacks. So why is voice-based impersonation, the whole deep fake, why is that more convincing than just an email? Yeah, this guy's got all the answers. Nobody else has it.
We're human, so hearing a familiar voice is pretty trustworthy.
Okay, so as humans, voices become trustworthy. Why else? Yep, over here, across the room. Quarterback.
Well, I guess for one thing, email. I guess especially before this kind of thing, email has been around longer than perfect voice recognition. So maybe there's the notion that we know that emails have previously been exploited. So
A lot of the habits that we get trained, because human behavior oftentimes is driven by habitual behaviors. That when we see things that are wrong in emails, we've been trained to notice those and to do something with them. We got someone who's going to add something over here.
Yep.
Also, you have to think about the fact that like if you were to receive a phone call, you have to respond, right? With like in that moment. Like it's an active conversation, whereas an email you can look at it and take the time to like go over it and like think if you want to click or respond or what you want to do, but when you're on the phone, it's like an active conversation that you have to make decisions in the moment.
Like some students, that's why they don't read their emails for 48 hours, right? We don't have an expectation of that immediacy of response, but when the phone rings and you pick it up, there's someone on the other line, right? 5 seconds of silence feels really, really awkward. So we feel like we have to do something. So again, it's changing, it's tapping into those human behaviors that are so different. We talked a little bit about verification steps that can stop these early. So how should organizations respond when a threat actor claims exceed confirmed reports? So a threat actor says that they have done a lot, and it turns out that they either are lying because they haven't seen it, right? We see evidence that in confirmed reports that 1,000 records have been breached. They say no, we have 1 million. Do I trust them?
We don't negotiate with terrorists.
We don't negotiate with terrorists. Obviously, we do. Some people do, some people don't. Let me ask you this. We'll go down this road. What if I'm a hospital and I am part of a ransomware attack and I do not have the medical records for the 1,000 people in my hospital that I'm supposed to be treating right now? Do I negotiate? What's the primary directive of a doctor? Or do no harm, right? And by not negotiating, someone might actually die.
You're not doing that.
You are choosing to do the harm by not writing the check. It becomes tricky, right? And here's the thing is I've seen organizations choose to not negotiate with terrorists. And if you don't have the right backups and the right things in place, you may actually spend way more money not negotiating than negotiating. So it can be a hard place to get to that absolute spot. So when someone claims they have way more data than what confirmed reports say, do we trust them? Do we say, well, you must because you said you did? The director of IT operations at your organization, and they say, we've got every single employee's personnel files. When confirmed reports said they maybe got 100 of them. What do you do? Yeah.
I just having like fill in some like data points, like example.
All right, so here's a little form to fill out and tell me what you have and prove it. Right.
Like ask them for like push a few different variables and see if things.
Okay, so give them a little test, all right? Creative thinking. What else can we do? That's not a wrong answer, right? That's one way we can go about it. What else could we do? Show me. You got the receipts. Do a screen share. You say you have them. I need evidence and proof, kind of get into exactly what you're saying, rather than just random, tests of whatever. Maybe they actually went and Googled that and got lucky and found it on LinkedIn or something. But how do we go about actually seeing it to verify? And if they truly have it, then all of a sudden what level of negotiation or not are we doing becomes different, right? If they only have 100 people, that's a certain level of a breach. A million is something else. What about when it comes to these sorts of things, what is something that organizations can do so they don't have to bear all of the risk of these things happening?
Like you should probably just go back to using paper and chalkboards.
Okay, we could change our behaviors and no longer live in a digital society. That's one thing. We could play that with it and all that good stuff. Yeah.
Insurance?
Insurance. I'm guessing everyone in here has car insurance because A, it's required by law, and B, most of us probably couldn't write a fat check to somebody if we ran into their $100,000 electronic vehicle and all this sort of thing, right? We only are willing to bear so much risk, so we buy insurance. Organizations buy insurance, and one of the things that's been very interesting to watch the process go is the amount of deductibles that insurance companies are wanting people to carry, because the exposure to risk is getting so much higher and higher. Why are deductibles in place when it comes to insurance policies? Yeah.
Maybe to discourage people from moving them.
Exactly. If you did not have a deductible, $1,000, let's just say is your car's deductible, you might decide that it's Fast and Furious in the streets of Poland. That you really don't care and you're gonna go out there and drive like a crazy person. That $1,000 deductible makes you think, well, I probably don't want to have to even part with $1,000. You have enough skin in the game to make your decision. Organizations is the same way, where their insurance policies have enough skin in the game that they're expected, or that they are willing to actually do a lot of the stuff they should do. Another requirement of a lot of these policies is, what is your organizational policy about X, Y, and Z? And you actually have to have audit reports, different things that show you are up to a certain standard in order to even get that insurance. So the insurance company knows you're doing what you need to be doing to make sure that things are in place to hopefully not end up in a plan. I'm gonna skip that slide and that slide, and that slide. And I want to wrap up with this key takeaway, is that these large incidents, whether they are what we saw with Canvas or what's the result of organizations losing money through various social engineering attacks, deepfakes, and so forth, oftentimes involve trust. I did something because I trusted you. In that trust, you persuaded me to do something. And there was some hole or some gap in my ability to verify that you were who you said you were. And so if we look at those three things and how do we try to mitigate or change those three things, we can begin to make a better security culture environment in a world where people want to be helpful, want to be trusting, and want to help other people. It's a lot of speaking.
Our next speaker, Cameron.
Oh, all right. I actually have an associate's meeting in 30 minutes, so we don't have all day.
So I've been hearing on the radio advertisements for incognito, where they'll take your name off of all of these sites, so they're not your phone number, there's no information. You think about those, heard about them?
I am not terribly familiar with that company. I'll tell you what I do. Google has a service where it will go out and it will report for you every time your name comes up in any of those places. I have a process where you can request with Google. And so I've been doing that and taking myself off of Tokyo and all these other random places. And I've done it myself just by clicking two buttons from Google said.
The advertisement says that they've got a name, got their names on 800 sites. No way you can keep up with that.
I will say, when it first happened, I probably got in the first week, probably 20 to 30 I had to deal with, and then after that, it was about 1 week. I think they might be overselling just a little bit. Hype is a thing. All right, other questions? We got time for probably one more before I have to try to sneak out of here to get ready for finance. Yeah.
So what courses do you teach?
I teach MIS 374 sometimes, less frequently now that I'm associate dean. Which is actually, that and doctoral seminars for the courses I teach. The other thing that I do is I lead, an MIS 499 course, which is used as the capstone requirement for people who go through the basic CySER certificate. And so, it's a self-directed independent study where I guide students through doing something that brings it all together in some meaningful way. I had somebody this year did a qualitative research where they sat down and interviewed a number of undergraduate students about their password hygiene behaviors and tried to classify and figure out, why people make those bad password decisions. But yeah, it was a good research project. Okay. Cool. Yeah, one more. So I refer to management information systems. Information systems and management information systems are really the same. But in the world of, and I think all of our classes are called MIS 499 or 250 or whatever. But in the college of business, we do have management, we do have information systems, what we call it, it is management. It makes it hard to make confusing. And we also have artificial. Cool. Well, thank you guys for having me. It was fun. Hopefully we all have fun.